is Mississippi Matters in partnership with the United Way of the Capital Area.
And we welcome you back to Mississippi Matters. We've been talking about the recent outcry for racial equality and the marches and against police brutality that we've seen from coast to coast. Now, the question today, why now? And what makes this time in history different than the past? I'm joined again by our three guests, Dr. Derrick Johnson, Dr. Reverend Jason Coker, and Dr. Ira Murray. Right now, we want to talk about the state flag, something that has been in headlines here for the past several days, and we know it will happen here more. Reverend Coker, we want to start with you. You mentioned before the break about Caucasians becoming more involved in the fight. We've heard here over the past few days people from all races coming together saying that something needs to be done about Mississippi's flag. They differ about how to change it, whether it's by vote or by the legislature, but the fact that people are getting involved in this of other races, it says a lot. Talk to us about that, Reverend Coker.
It does. The state flag absolutely contains the Confederate battle flag in it. If you look at the three Confederate flags that were created during the Confederacy, the second and third flag are nearly identical to our state flag. Our state flag was made the state flag after Reconstruction, when all the change that had happened in Mississippi, where we had black legislators and the rise of the Klan destroyed that. And this was the flag that came out of that historical space. And it is absolutely a flag of white supremacy that white supremacist groups use. Maybe not the Mississippi flag in particular, but certainly the Confederate battle flag. And I hear a lot within the white community about their heritage and or our heritage even. But that heritage is based on white superiority. And every living human being that is African American in the state of Mississippi right now has had to live under a flag of white superiority their entire life. I can't understand what that kind of trauma feels like. And at this point, it's high time for the white community to understand that the heritage that flag represents is racist and has been damaging and deadly to the black community, especially in the state of Mississippi, since it was a state flag. And acknowledging that racism is step one, and then doing away with that flag would definitely be step two. And I've heard a lot of people talk about churches shouldn't be getting involved in this because we really need a change of heart. And I think that's right. People do need to change their hearts about racism. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. And the question about changing hearts is important to me, because I'm asking whose heart needs to be changed. And if we can change the state flag, that's going to change a lot of hearts in Mississippi. It's going to make a lot of Mississippians feel like they belong here, maybe for the first time in their lives, and that there's a flag that represents all of us instead of some of us. So I do believe that there's a change of heart that needs to happen, but that comes when we can change our state flag and let at least all of our African Americans know that they belong here. This is their home, they are loved, and they're cared for.
And we want to bring Derrick Johnson into this conversation. Okay, we've done many interviews about the flag over the years. Right now, as we stand here in June of 2020, do you think that we're on the cusp of seeing that flag change in Mississippi?
Well, we're on the cusp of having a conversation about the change. I'm ready for the change to happen. As a student at Tougaloo in '93, I was one of many plaintiffs who filed the lawsuit against the state of Mississippi because we, at that time, had never officially adopted the current flag. I was the campaign manager in 2001 for the ballot initiative for a vote to change the flag. We've had several conversations, one in 2015 and 2014 about changing the flag. And so now that race is a national issue, the conversation is ripe. The real question for the state of Mississippi, particularly policymakers, will we see the necessary courage to move forward? The fact that we have this emblem in the corner of our flag has deterred businesses from coming to the state of Mississippi. We're one of very few states. We don't have a single Fortune 500 company headquartered in the state of Mississippi. We have, on the conversation of heritage, held up this symbol that wasn't even the Confederate battle flag for the Confederacy. It was a battle flag for the Northern Virginia Army, and it was not even recognized until in the 30s when it was resurrected and used as a symbol of racial hatred and terror. So we don't even have the history correct when someone say that it's about heritage, because it was not the battle flag for the Confederacy of Mississippi. It was not the official flag of the Confederacy. It was a battle flag of a Northern Virginia Army led by General Lee, who on his deathbed renounced the flag. And so it is clearly a symbol that must be addressed. It has to be addressed through legislative action, not the vote. Because had we put the question of segregated schools on the ballot, we would still have segregated schools. If we would have put on the ballot the question of slavery, people would still be enslaved. You cannot put on a ballot questions of racial hatred and symbols that exemplify white supremacy and expect the majority of the population to do right by the minority of the population. The state of Mississippi must not put our citizen, our state, through this again to be in a national, international light of a state that's looking backwards as opposed to a state that's looking forward.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. Now, Dr. Murray, the United Way fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. What more can the organization do right now when it comes to having a conversation about the flag?
Yeah, so I think what we're doing right now is a good start to that conversation. I think we have to have really open and honest conversations. One, about the history of the flag, which really is undeniable, but also about how the flag affects everyone. You know, flags in states are uniting symbols. They are symbols of what the state stands for, what's important, what the values of the state are. And if a flag is divisive, if a flag is not unifying, then I think it is time to change it. You know, undoubtedly for black people across the state of Mississippi and really across the entire country, the Confederate flag is a really hurtful symbol. And it does really nothing to bring people together. And I understand the argument that people make about wanting to celebrate their heritage and their history. And no one is saying that you can't do that. What we're saying, though, is that for a flag, it's important that it be for everyone. And if it's not, then we certainly need to look into changing that. Now, what can organizations do? You know, we need to have these conversations. We need to be open and honest about what's going on, but also about racial equity within our states and within our community, because the flag really is a symbol. But the real issue is white supremacy. The real issue is systemic racism. And that is a signal that that is okay. And I don't think that anybody, I would love to believe that no one in Mississippi thinks that that's okay. So as organizations, we really need to develop a habit and a practice of, one, disaggregating our data so that we know how programs are impacting people of all different races, so we can see where there are gaps, so we can see where we might be able to change our policies, our practices, our interventions, so that we are really targeting the groups who need the interventions the most. We need to really understand and dig into the historic nature of systemic racism. You know, how did communities become the way that they are? You know, what policies went in place to create wealth gaps, for instance, or to create the inequities and the disparities we see in education or access to health care. These are things that are really important for us to dig into because this can't just be a theoretical conversation. This has to be real action, real words. And we have to have the voices of everyone involved. We need people who are directly affected by systemic racism. We need people who are in the institutions that might be knowingly or unknowingly perpetuating it. We really need the voice of young people because young people really have been at the center of all social and civil rights movements throughout history in Mississippi and in other states. You know, Aaron, I'm from South Carolina originally, and we flew the Confederate flag in South Carolina up until 5 years ago. And it took 9 people being murdered in a church doing Bible study by white supremacists to make that happen. I really hope that that's not what happens in Mississippi. I really hope, and I'm optimistic that it won't take that. I love the fact that so many organizations, from chambers to companies to universities to individuals, are really saying, hey, it's time to make this change, and a real movement is happening. And I'm really optimistic that that this will be the first step in racial healing in Mississippi.
Definitely a very interesting time in history right now. Thank you so much, Dr. Murray, Mr. Johnson, and Reverend Coker. Keep it right here, everyone. Some final thoughts are coming up.